Hey there everyone, it's Jaycee. Welcome back to another perfect pairing. In this video, I'm featuring the dynamic duo Fruitful Fun. This is new for June 2024. And the purpose of this video is to show you 3 of my design secrets to creating beautiful balanced stenciled cards. Before we get into today's project, make sure you subscribe to the Altenew channel for more card making and paper crafting tutorials. My Perfect Pairings with Jaycee series explores crafting techniques that effortlessly blend sure-to-love new releases and well-loved Altenew favorites. If you love these kinds of crafty tutorials, hit the bell icon so you'll be notified of my videos airing on the 2nd and 4th Sunday. So let's get started. I'm using my Stampwheel sticky mat grid to hold a plain white piece of cardstock. This cardstock is cut to A2, so that's 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And on top of the sticky mat grid and the A2 sized panel, I'm going to layer the number 1 stencil from dynamic duo Fruitful Fun. And I will simply center the stencil on top of this panel. From the Pocketful of Sunshine Fresh Dye ink set, I'm grabbing the lightest value color, so that's Citrus Burst. And with an Altenew mini ink blending brush, I'll create solid layers on all of the lemon-sized images. I'm not paying too much attention to shadows or to roundness, depth. I'm simply creating a playful background and scene with all of these fruit images. Moving down the line of values in Pocketful of Sunshine, I'm using fresh lemon to add just a little touch of this darker yellow color to the edges of the lemon images. And you'll see it's at random. I'm not trying to keep all of the lighting direction the same. I just want a simple gradient on all of these lemons. To avoid contamination between all of these, I am starting from lightest to darkest value ink, so I'm still staying within the yellow color families, and I'll move on to Honey Drizzle for the banana images. And again, at random, I'm just applying simple gradients on all of the bananas. And then the last color I'll use on all of the bananas is Maple Yellow. Then I'll move on to the pear images. From Jade Dreams Fresh Dye ink set, I'll use Pistachio as my base layer. And then the next color I'll use is Misty Sage, again just to add a little bit of depth to these images. From the Sun-Kissed Delights Fresh Dye ink set, I'll use the Peachy Glow for all of the orange images. And then I'll move on to the next value ink, so that's Golden Honeycomb. In Blushberry Bliss Fresh Dye ink set, I'll grab Strawberry, so that's the lightest value ink in the set, to create my base layer for all the strawberry images. And then for the depth layer, I'll use Dusty Pink. I did a little bit of planning ahead. I wanted a lighter palette for all the fruit images because I knew I was going to go just a little bit darker on these next elements that you'll see later in this tutorial. So to stencil all the leaves, I'll use the etching alignment on the number 2 stencil, and this creates the opening for all the stem and leaf layers to accompany all the fruits. So back to Jade Dreams Fresh Dye ink set, I'll use Mossy Meadow to apply a really quick gradient of this green on all of the stems and leaves. And then with Green Opal, I'll add a little bit of depth to all of these leaf images. Altenew's Dynamic Duo subscription wouldn't be complete without its accompanying stamp set. And the coordinating images in the stamp set create the little dimples or textured images for the pears, oranges, bananas, lemons, and strawberries. So there are just little vein details that you can stamp, and it gives that little hand-drawn look. It's a little bit playful, so much fun. And what I'm going to use is jet black fresh dye ink. This is from the Greenfields fresh dye ink set. And I'm using an acrylic block. I'm not going to use a stamp positioning tool, just to help carry on that playful, fun feel of this background. So I grabbed the accompanying layer to the pair image. And if it helps for some of these images that overhang, you might want to grab your dynamic duo packaging, as it'll help show you where some of these images and the stamp images align with the previous layers. Moving on, the strawberry layer is pretty simple. You just align the leaf layers and the textured dimples of the strawberry perfectly align in place. Then I'll move on to the orange. I'm really just paying attention to that single vein on the leaf, and that'll help me align the rest of the layers of these orange images. The banana is even more forgiving. All I have to ensure is that the line spans the entire length of the banana. And then for the lemon, I want to make sure that these dimples don't all face in the same direction, the little pores of the lemon. So I am rotating my acrylic block just to make sure it doesn't all look the same. So here's the sample card that I made for the Altenew website and also for my blog. I used a little bit more of a vibrant color palette because I left the background white, but all I did was simply fill in the background with some gold hearts using the must-have gel pen set, and use the coordinating die for the Dynamic Duo, though it doesn't regularly come with the Dynamic Duo subscription, but I just wanted to showcase what this looks like if you leave the background all by itself without any other extra products. So I'm still working on the background to this card, and after I wiped off the #1 layer stencil to the Dynamic Duo Fruitful Fun, and also some time has passed so that the fresh dye ink layers could dry back, I'm going to take my clear embossing ink and a mini ink blending brush that I dedicate to just the embossing ink. I'll press the embossing ink through the #1 layer stencil, and also use the mini ink blending brush to get some of these finer details in if I need to. And I'll do my best to completely saturate these open images. And then with a clear embossing powder, I'm going to cover the entire panel in this clear powder and heat set. I've always really loved how these images come back to life when you apply a clear embossing powder. I'll repeat the same process for the leaves. This time I'll rely more on my ink blending tool to make sure I get into those finer areas of the #2 layering stencil. But otherwise I'm going to apply that embossing ink one more time, and then repeat the clear embossing layer so that all of my stenciled images are now coated in a solid layer of clear embossing. So hopefully by now you've guessed that we are going to do a little bit of an inked embossed resist. And what I want to do on this background to make it even more full is to add a little bit of color. So I'm using Sea Glass from the Cool Summer Night Fresh Dye ink set and a large ink blending brush to create a center blend on this panel. So I'll concentrate a lot of this color right in the center of the panel with my large ink blending brush, and I'm diffusing it towards the edges of the panel. Then I'll move down the line of colors from the Cool Summer Night Fresh Dye ink set to Ocean Waves, and I'll concentrate this color more towards the edges and the corners of this panel. I want to create more of a dynamic and brighter center and make the edges of this panel darker. I wanted just a little bit more depth, so then I moved down to Dusk. This will be the last color from the Cool Summer Night Fresh Dye ink set I'll use. And I'll do light touches of this just on the edge of the panel, so that there's a lot of contrast between the center and the edges of this full background. So after I remove this panel from the sticky matte grid, I'm going to find more playful and fun ways to fill in this stenciled background When I was at Simon Says Create with Jaycee, the acrylic markers were a hit, and it was just so fun to show people that the acrylic markers are completely different from other paint-based markers that are on the market right now, because there's no need to prime these markers. Once you open the packaging, they're ready to go. And I love that these colors, of course, they have to coordinate with the Altenew line. So picking and choosing colors to coordinate with the existing background is really simple. And of course, these paint pens are opaque, so I can use this ink right on top of my ink blended background and they'll show up. So I'm going to grab colors that coordinate with the fruits on this panel. So here's number 6, this is Fresh Lemon. And I'm applying random dots just all around the panel. Really easy way to fill and embellish a background. Then I'll use Caramel Toffee. This color coordinates with the banana images. To coordinate with the strawberry images, I'll use Rose Dust. That's the number 2 acrylic marker. For the pear images, I'll use number 7. That's Minty Mint. And I felt like I wanted just a little bit more green, so I'm going to use number 11. That's Volcano Lake to fill in some of these more open areas. And then finally, I'll use the number 20 acrylic marker, Coral Pink. I just wanted a little bit more red to coordinate with the strawberry images. So why all this effort to fill in the background with acrylic markers, with ink? Since our background is acting more as our focal point, I like to create a lot of detail since this is your focal area. So that's why I like to create this fun full background to accompanying our perfect pairing for this card. And speaking of perfect pairing, my philosophy is that if I'm going to spend so much effort, so much time on creating a nice full background, that my sentiment to balance should be simple and really bold. So there are a lot of Altenew sentiment dies, layering dies, stamp sets, better press sets that have coordinating dies that are perfect for this technique. So if you've got any of those large sentiment images, that's what I'm looking for in my sets. But Mega Greetings number 2 was actually one of the first sets I bought by myself. It's one of the first products I used in my Altenew Educator Certification Program projects. And to pair with the palette of the background, I'm using Shimmering Shore Glitter Cardstock set and Sparkling Water. I think it's perfect to match with the Cool Summer Night Fresh Dye Ink background. It has a green teal base, but also this wildly iridescent quality to it. I think it's beautiful. It'll coordinate with the fruit images as well. And I'm using the U die from the Mega Greetings to Stamp and Die bundle to cut Sparkling Water Glitter Cardstock, as well as a solid white cardstock layer. And what I'm doing is creating this drop shadow for the sentiment. So I will glue the white cardstock layer on top of the glitter cardstock, and I'll slightly offset it so that it creates this drop shadow. I created this Amaze Me sentiment from the coordinating stamp set in Mega Greetings 2, and I stamped that in Ocean Waves and created a really simple stamped banner. Then the other element I'll use to pair with this sentiment is a little vellum banner. I'm creating these ribbon tails on both ends of this roughly 3¼ inch by 1 inch tall banner. But what I'm going to do is offset it slightly. So I'm going to put it down and put it to the right edge of my background. And what I'm doing here is creating just a little bit of asymmetry. So there are a lot of textural things going on in this card. So I've got a smooth gradient with the ink layers on the fruits and on the background. I've added clear embossing powder to the fruits, and there are glitter elements, vellum elements for texture from the sentiment area. And really, I think that all of these textural elements, textural variations help create a more interesting background for the entire piece. Though tempting, I do want to add splatter, but the dots help alleviate that temptation. And instead, what I will do to help frame the sentiment is use the Essential Black and White enamel dots. And I'll just use the white ones to help point to and frame the sentiment. So again, this is more of a textural piece. It's got this little glossy accent to it. And I'll use 3 dots to frame and create a line through the sentiment. to create a little bit more of a focal area on this card. So really those are three elements that I try to incorporate on a full card background. So aside from just stenciling this background, I've included other full layers. So I added ink to the background so that it's just not a white blank cardstock. And I added these little acrylic marker dots to help fill in the open spaces between the fruits. I created an asymmetrical element by putting my sentiment in the bottom right quadrant of the card. I think this just creates a little bit more interest to the background. And then finally, I added a lot of texture. So that's the clear embossing powder, the glitter cardstock, vellum, the enamel dots, just other things to touch and to look at when your recipient receives their card.
Hello there, crafty friend, Lydia here. Just popping in to say that you can get your daily dose of crafting tips, techniques, and tutorials just like this by subscribing to the Altenew YouTube channel. All you need to do is click on that little bell up there and you will never miss a video. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.